The Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Real Doctor Who fans with real Doctor Who opinions.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast, a podcast dedicated to discussing and reviewing all things Doctor Who, Big Finish, and other science fiction stuff that tickle our fancy. In this episode, episode 368, I'm going to be looking at the question, do Doctor Who fans want their show to be canceled? Yes, this might not be evergreen, but as we are getting ever so close to Season 2, Season 15, Series 41, or whatever, I think I mismatched a couple of those things, but, there is a lot of, worry, concern, and rumors going around about the future of this show, and I am here to discuss that, give my thoughts, look at some articles, and hopefully hear from you. Also, just a little fun aside, according to, we were put on a list of the 100 top Doctor Who podcasts for 2025. Now, it's easy to figure out who the top 3-4 are. I went through some of them and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that one exists. But I believe, if memory serves me right, we are 51. We are just about the average, as much as average as you could get. So you know what? Thanks for the people who put us on there and ranked us 51. 51 in the ranking, number 1 in my heart. So with that being said, I'm going to get to this topic of do Doctor Who fans want their show to be canceled? And I find this quite interesting because, again, you go to various Twitter sites and whatnot, and there is a whole bunch of frustration, questions revolving around where things are. You have, I like it or not, obviously Chris Chibnall was very polarizing for both positives and negatives. Most people could say negatives. RTD Part 2 has been, I think, even more polarizing than the, RTD Part 1 and, maybe controversial opinion, the Chris Chibnall era. And that's just because I think people were expecting the series 1 through 4 RTD, and this is RTD who has been doing his projects and now is incorporating more of what he has been doing individually into Doctor Who. And I think that you're having some friction between long-term fans who want just a man in a box going around solving mysteries, not with a dog though, because that's one of the best cartoons of all time. But yeah. And then oddly, you have Big Finish who is caught up in all of this. So one of the things I want to talk about, I like a good poll. I like a good poll. I have not looked at the comments. However, this poll dated March 11th was, if Ncuti were to leave at the end of season 2, would you prefer this series to rest for a while, or should it continue straight onto a new Doctor? If you're going to vote and comment, please be respectful. I have not read any of the comments, but out of all of the rankings or the voting, it was neck and neck. 50.2% of people responding to this poll said Doctor Who should rest, whereas 49.8% of those polled said that it should keep on going to a new Doctor. Now, the interesting thing about Twitter, the interesting thing about, many of these social media platforms is at times you have people who like a certain, narrative, and they only follow their narrative. They're only in their echo chambers. So I'm not 100% sure. I'm very interested to see if this creator on Twitter is actually, straight down the path, does not have, one side or another side, because I think that's where you kind of start getting muddied water, is if you put a poll but you are either polarizing one way or polarizing the other way, and the poll ends up being very inaccurate. And as somebody who enjoyed and at one point in time was going to be a statistician, I think that is quite interesting. Now, I'm going to go to the comments. This could be fun. Let's just see what this one. So we start off with the wilderness years were extremely dull for me as part from the VHS range. Of course, personally, I get tired of constant talk of rest. I wouldn't mind a year or two off the air for a full rethink, but ultimately, I'd say it's going to be a soap style never end. So kind of like a soap opera type thing. And the person who posted this said, I personally think that this is why I would like to see a rest. Start from the ground up and get in new blood into it. Maybe bring in more unknowns as a doctor and map out a plan for the tenure. I agree with you. Constant breaks don't really help the show. Anyway, so then somebody replied to this poll, I'm 50-50. Yeah, no duh. Like the poll is almost practically 50-50. I will tell you, I did not vote on this poll. I saw the poll. I did not want to voice my side one way or another. But yeah. So then somebody said, why the need for rest? Just crack on with the new doctor. And, it's interesting to say that because of what has gone on with continuity, because of what has gone on with this whole degeneration thing, where, at the end of season 1, you have the doctor all alone by himself. However, wouldn't also, what's his face? I can't think of the villain's name right now off the top of my head. Scream it at your podcast. Don't worry, I'll probably hear it and then eventually, correct my mistake. But wouldn't you think, why, when the TARDIS bi-regenerated, wouldn't it also be in that bi-regenerated TARDIS? And and I don't have access to the, the heart TARDIS or the memory TARDIS or whatever, because if those are supposed to be in canon and continuity, but they're only available to the British public because it is done by the BBC, not by Disney Plus. Well, if that's the rationale for why you can't add canon for this or for this over here and over there, is because, you can't add canon because not all people can have access to comic books. Not all people can have access to this. But then, you go off and do this and expect that, people are going to wholeheartedly accept it as canon. That is kind of a fallacy if you ask me. But again, you have the whole needing, I think it needs to be retooled because of, again, the whole memory TARDIS, the whole bi-regeneration, which is a thing, which is it going to stop being a thing? Is the second regenerated doctor just going to melt into a pile of goo or something like that? Because maybe that's what happens. My understanding was, before this whole memory TARDIS thing, which I haven't seen a single episode of, but my belief was it only happened right then and right there because the toy maker was right then and right there. Now, he did say that, he's made a mess of his timeline, which to me does not mean that it is by regeneration across the board. It is basically, that's why there's so many inconsistencies with your continuity, is I've been, playing havoc with this, which again could mean that you can create your own canon with Doctor Who, because you could just say, well, that's the toy maker's canon, so I'm not going to accept that. So I think it's kind of an interesting idea, but I do think that there does need to be retooling. If there doesn't need to be retooling, to me, the worst thing would be, I'd rather have a Wilderness Years Part 2 rather than a complete reboot or even a soft reboot. Because again, I thought this was supposed to be a soft reboot. And then, of course, during the most recent Christmas special, you had them, you had the Shooty doctor talk about, this is why people don't like you. This is why you're all alone. I thought you were supposed to have moved on from this. I thought that was supposed to be stuck with the 14th Doctor. I thought the sadness, the mopiness, the depressingness of all the mistakes were left burdened on him to help work his stuff out from him, and Judy was supposed to be, the new Doctor going forward because it's a soft reboot or whatnot, and we can't reference canon that previously doesn't exist in the ownership of Disney. So we can't say, please go watch this episode because, then people would have to go get BritBox accounts or whatnot, or stream free on Tubi or Pluto TV, and they're not likely to be for that. So, yeah, I think a retooling. I think that's a good word for that. A retooling needs to be done, and I think some certain kinks need to be actually ironed out, because there's an article on DoctorWhoTV.co.uk that I think spells it out a tad bit better, but I'm just gonna see about that. Continuing on with this thread, it says, why the F would we need another rest? It was rested for 3 years before the previous season. The classic season ran for 22 years with no gaps. We're having 2 seasons that already you're asking for a break. I don't, okay. Why so angry? It's rubbish place, in my opinion. Blah, blah, blah. Unlike the 1985s, there are many science fiction alternatives. That's an interesting thing. And that's another reason why I think a lot of people are kind of ticked at RTD Part 2 and Chris Chibnall. There are so many science fiction alternatives. Why do we need to, and Legion has said it fantastically in the past, why do we need to change the canon? Why do we need to find out who the Doctor is? Why can't it just be a mystery? Why can't we just enjoy the mystery? And why can't we just kind of continue on figuring out good defeating evil? And also, unlike the Chibnall era and kind of the RTD Part 2, could we kind of go back to going to distant galaxies? You had season, the third Doctor season, which was Unit. But at least at times he felt as though he was off Earth, even though there was, Earth-like settlements and whatnot here and there. But I miss the foreign planets. I miss the alien environment. And it's almost like, well, it's a lot cheaper to do this. And, maybe we could just get a little bit more political. Again, Stephen Moffat said it perfectly. This is not the left show. This is not the right show. He said that, and then I think he's come across and said some other things that have been controversial. So whatever. Somebody said, being respectful to show the show needs a new Doctor and a new showrunner desperately. The latter. It doesn't need to rest, just needs to be made for the general public again. It was designed to be rather than the ever-narrowing niche. And treat the audience with respect. Okay, interesting. I don't think you could retool the show without some time. Let's see. This person says RTD formula is done. Plotless, undramatic trolling, idealist, and glib. Okay, so this person already has some thoughts. Just going to scroll down past that. Oh man, I was hoping that this show would rest for the dominant side. No 50-50. Who the heck wants the show to go? Who the heck wants the show to go on at this stage? It's not even the effing Doctor. It's a clone at this stage. The whole thing, it has zero chance of ever getting better. Okay, so always the optimist. That person right there. All right, so we have that right there. And on Facebook, let me just do this right here. Okay. So on Facebook, somebody posted, why do Doctor Who fans hate Doctor Who and want it to be canceled? And I thought it was a really interesting, and I might have brought this up before, I can't remember. But I think it is really interesting and goes into this conversation. the person says, we don't hate, quote unquote, hate it. We just got fed up with how crappy it became after RTD left the first time, which is so interesting. That statement right there is so interesting, revolving around how RTD left the first time, because I know I myself was very excited for Stephen Moffat to take over. He had the best episodes in the RTD run. I think probably besides, The Waters of Mars and a couple other episodes, I think Stephen Moffat did a better job as a writer for Doctor Who than RTD did during the first era. But then once he took over the range, I feel as though I think it's one of those things where oftentimes the star athlete can rise to or the star athlete gets hurt or taken out of the game or something like that. And then you have the, the journeyman or whatnot, or the person who comes off the bench and just lifts everybody up. The star athlete gets traded, gets moved to another team, and now that person, that journeyman or that person off the bench, is now put in the prime time, expected to do, if not the exact same, better. And I think that sometimes that can be a super struggle for so many people involved. Now, and I think that's where I think that's where Stephen Moffat struggled. Season 5 was pretty strong for the most part. Season 6 was good. Season 4. Sorry, I'm doing Star Trek counting again. Season 7, I think, really struggled because I believe that had Part A and Part B in it, if memory serves me right. I can't remember if Season 6 did that. And I think that was a struggle too, as well as, again, if you rewatch Season 7, you can see that Stephen Moffat really wanted another year with Matt Smith. And Matt Smith, saw Hollywood in the distance. He struggled for quite some time, I feel as though, until he was in that stupid Terminator movie, which was not good. I mean, not to be confused with The Dark Fate or whatever. That one is even worse. But, this is not a Terminator podcast. This is a Doctor Who podcast. But I really feel as though that Stephen Moffat was struggling and had an overarching plan for a 4-series complete overarchingness with what he wanted to do. And again, I think that comes out even further in the Peter Capaldi's Mummy on the Orient Express, because I think that was supposed to be included in the season 8 finale, which was going to make more sense of the voice of The Silence Will Fall or whatnot. I don't think, and maybe I need to go rewatch it. I don't think it really has fully, the voice and whatnot has fully been spelled out. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've seen it. And you know what? Here's the odd thing. Besides a couple episodes here and there, I don't think New Who has its rewatchability at a higher clip compared to the classic series. I think the classic series is, maybe it's just because that's what I grew up on, but I feel as though the classic series has a higher rewatchability factor compared to the new series. Don't even go to the Chris Chibnall era, where it is just like, oh yeah, I would rather watch a blender blend a iPhone. Actually, I have watched that on YouTube before. That's pretty kind of fun. A blender blending an iPhone. That's pretty fun. Yeah, I don't hate it. It just got fed up with how crappy it was. Okay, so I read that one. Let's see. Oh, this guy had like 20 something posts. So, or replies. So somebody comes in and said, so you'd rather see it canceled and maybe rest for another 16 years? Question mark. And then it's like, if it helps preserve the legacy of the show, yes. And that is fantastic. Yes. The guy who said that also comes back and says, did I say that? Says after Moffat and the others might as well have been canceled or just sold off. I don't have anything in my collection after the 50th. Wow. That's interesting because the last time I bought a Blu-ray for the new show was the 50th. Actually, it was the Time of the Doctor. But yeah, I'm gonna call the Time of the Doctor, 50th part B. But yeah, I don't own much after the 50th because I think Capaldi could have been the best Doctor of all of New Who, but the writing just was not consistently good. Let's see. Somebody says you're missing out because the Moffat years were some of the show's best. Series 9 through 10 are the pinnacle of the show. I need to rewatch Series 9. I think that whole Face the Raven Clara thing, I think that really I think I needed time. And you know what? We're almost coming up on like the 8-year anniversary or so of Series 9's completion. So let's see. Not everyone agrees, but I thought Moffat was tremendous. Consider season 6, incredibly short arc. And then what did he do with the 50th anniversary, especially considering Eccleston wouldn't play ball? Truly amazing. Moffat is gifted and driven. And, people are saying this and that. And then it says it didn't, let's see, it didn't what? It didn't, about hating this show. I'm just going to move on. Somebody says, and is this like, it's all the same with Marvel and Star Wars fans. Interesting. Again, I believe at one point in time in the podcast, I think Liam or Legion or both were horrified. I believe it's called Fan Toxicity. I want to say it's about episode 106 or something like that. Maybe I'll have to, play an oldie but a goodie and re-up it, and then maybe use the AI generator to actually make it sound, good, because I didn't know what I was doing back then. But it's quite interesting to say that, Marvel and Star Wars fans are like that. But I think you get it with any fandom. One of these future shows that I have planned is to go and compare and contrast various shows canon. Because I did do not a deep dive, but I did a dive. I got out of it was not a deep end dive. It was, I didn't just put my foot in the first couple of steps of the shallow end. I think I, put myself in lightly to this and or probably up to, my kneecaps or, over Liam's head. Both can be true. Sorry, Liam. I thought that would be funny. Cue Liam's mirror. Nobody hates Doctor Who more than Doctor Who fans, well, apart from Michael Grade. Oh, ouch. I don't think you understand the term fan. Fan is a noun, plural. Fans, a person who has strong, and this has been my argument for the longest time. Fan is short for fanatic. Plural of the single is fan, plural is fans, a person who has strong interest or admiration in a particular person or thing. Yeah, I think that is where a lot of people want to construe fandom is I like thing. I will buy thing. It is, and I don't classify those people as fans. I classify them as, well, that's when, you say that, you have your fan card. And I'm revoking your fan card privileges. I'd love to be like in a pub where new Who fans and old Who fans clashed and they both started screaming at each other. I think the fun thing would be, is I think the old school fans would know more about the new Who era compared to the old Who fans. And again, that's where I would say the passion would be with the older folks, just because of, I think if you really are a fan, you are all out. You like the whole thing, and it begs the question with this. And I'm going to ask this to myself introspectively or whatnot, but does that make me less of a fan as I struggle to like the Chibnall era and RTD Part 2 era? Because being a fan, you have to suck in, absorb them. But at least for me, I'm going to disagree with myself here live on the podcast for all of you to hear. And it would be one thing if I said I never watched it, or I didn't see that episode, or I'm not unfamiliar with that one. But if I can give rational reasons for why this is a mess, for why the most recent season finale was horrible, why The Timeless Child was a bad idea, why Joe Martin could be an alternate version of, let's just, for funsies' sake, let's just say Joe Martin is a bi-regeneration of the William Hartnell Doctor, or actually the bi-regeneration of the second Doctor. Why can't we say that? Because then if we do that, we're including the Big Finish continuity, which would be the second Doctor still going on working for the CIA. You have the third Doctor existing. Then you also have the bi-regeneration fugitive Doctor who has the TARDIS. So it exists. She's not pre-Hartnell. And I think that would actually work. Again, and the only reason why I came up with that on the spot right there, mind you, that had not been a thought originally until just a second ago. But the only reason why I was able to do that is because of my fandom, because of my passion, because of having been exposed, not in that way, but in willingly. Now that sounds even worse. Anyway, I digress. But exposed to Doctor Who throughout not only my childhood, but have continually watched and rewatched the classic show. Not necessarily a new show, but I do have a general good grasp of what is going on. I should probably do a revisit of that. Then somebody says, I think it's a small minority. I don't want it canceled. I just want it to get better. Ooh, okay. And then it says, I believe people feel with a reset, it won't get better. That's a touche. Interesting back and forth. Somebody says we don't hate it. We just want, we want it as was up to Capaldi's end. What we do hate is how bad the show has become and how badly perceived our favorite show has become. I'm in the 5-year rest camp. Interesting. All right. At which point in time it says season 2 hasn't even aired yet, and so you have no idea if it's good or bad. Aha, touche. I see. Touche. This person comes back and says, we can base a judgment on previous efforts. Aha. Touche, touche. And then another person comes in and says, most people will be watching and hoping it will be better, but seeing as it was filmed immediately after the last one, ahaha, touche, 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 says this lady. Opinions may change or they may not, but if it is more the same, then I won't expect everyone to suddenly love it. Fantastically put. I like this stream. Good job. All right. And then it says, all I can say is that if I compare RTD's first run compared to this, there is a significant shortfall. I can see where they are coming from, but if there are those who are loving it, and I don't want them to be disappointed. Heck, I don't wish any harm to anyone. I'm more of a classic fan anyway. So if you love this era or not, here's to you Whovians, wherever you may be. And you know, that's kind of nice. You know what? It's one of those, if you like it, like, that's one of the things that I like to say. If I don't like something, I'm like, oh, that sucked. And somebody will come by and say, hey, I liked it. I'm like, you know what? I'm glad you liked that. But, no, I don't even say but. I just say, I'm glad you liked it. Because that's me just basically saying, I appreciate that we can have difference of opinions, and I don't have to like the same thing that you like. So, this person replied to the post and says, because it isn't very good anymore. At which point in time, the person who created the post said, how? The next season hasn't even aired, and so you have no idea whether it will be good or bad. And then they said, well, it's been pretty bad since 2017. Then again, it is that might change with the next couple seasons. And it says, it's going to get worse. LOL. Okay. Sure. All right. And then I do appreciate, before I just transition to the doctorwho.co.tv.co.uk article, I'm just going to end with this. This person says, what a loaded question. Okay, I'll try to explain this again as simply as I know how to. Okay. All right. Tell me. Whoa. Yeah. That's 6 paragraphs. I thought you were going to explain it simply to me. Huh. All right. Oh. All right. Let's go. We, as longtime Doctor Who fans, don't hate the show. We love the show. Many of us for decades We love the show. Many of us for decades. What we don't like is the direction the show has taken for the past 8 years. But let's be specific. When someone says this, it's idiotic to have a knee-jerk reaction of, oh, you don't like the show because you hate women, blacks, gays. If that is honestly what you believe, then you're not a thinker. I'm hoping you're not like that. So if so, keep reading. No one cared that Captain Jack was omnisexual, and no one cared that the main character was a lizard. That one of the main characters was a lizard woman who had a human wife. Why? Because they were great characters. And the stories were interesting, and the Doctor was believable, and we were interested in him and the rest of the cast. The difference now is that the Doctor is not believable as portrayed by Jodie, and Ncuti's portrayal is even less convincing. Why? Because Doctor Who has been made to be common. It is merely another vehicle at which social justice I do not like when people use that. I'm going to, at one point in time, do anti-social justice warrior Whovians versus social justice warrior Whovians. That is going to be, I've started to dig. That's going to be a future podcast. I think that is, because I hate that, because here's the thing. I'm just going to stop reading this person's, short 9-paragraph response. I feel as though the instant you accuse somebody of being an SJW, you mainly have lost the war. You can say you don't like the directions, you don't like the message, you think the message is too overhanded, and that's what I feel. I have never accused anybody of being an SJW. On the other side, if you're an anti-SJW, you are constantly, comparisons to a man with a mustache in Germany and whatnot, and, how you want women in a corner and people should lose voting rights and all that other stuff. I think both comparisons hurt both sides of the argument. Anyway, back to this. RTD2, like Chibnall before him, doesn't care about the stories. He only cares about the message, and it shows, which is why the viewership figures continue to drop. To sum it up, almost nobody cares about race, gender, and orientation of the Doctor or Doctor's companions. What we do care about is about being entertained. Yeah, I agree with that. And this show, which we used to adore, has become uninteresting, preachy, and frankly cringe. Solution? I don't know. Most of us are past the point of ever caring. Now, that's the scary thing. I'm going to pause again. I like that people are feisty on Twitter and on commenting boards like this on Facebook. And the main reason why is, and you'll notice I didn't say YouTube, because again, YouTube, you have people who I think at one point in time believed what they believed, and then they got corporatized. They either got corporatized for being I have to love everything because I get invited do free things, get exclusive offers here and there. And the instant I say that this sucks, I won't be invited anymore. Contra to the on the other side, if they don't say how much they hate it, well, their viewership drives up and they don't get the viewing figures, the downloads, the likes, subscribes, the super chats or whatnot that they're accustomed to. And so I think both sides, and I guess this is like, a shortcut to what I'm going to be working on in the near future with anti SJWs and SJWs, Doctor Who fans. And this is like sums it up perfectly. It's a business motto, whatever. It basically is, you have to side with the people that are watching your channel. And that's why I stopped talking about, I did not include YouTube in the whole thing, is because, and maybe podcasting, but I don't feel as though podcasting, once YouTube became a thing and could be a monetizational thing, I think that's where you really can lose a lot of people. With podcasting, it really is hard to have a niche genre podcast of not only science fiction, not only, Doctor Who, but, if you even break it down even further to only Big Finish audios, I think you're getting into the niche area of everything, which is why I do like it as, Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast, discussing it, debating and discussing Doctor Who news, reviews, commentaries, audios, and other science fiction things that tickle our fancy, because we can, step outside the box. Now, the the Star Trek episode is not liked and downloaded well at all, which I totally get because it's Doctor Who podcast, and on the stream is Star Trek. Yeah. Anyway, back to this. All right, let's see. Where am I? Solution. We watched the old episodes from when quality, not the message, was the primary consideration. Now, other people are going to come in and say, well, but there's always been a message. There has been. But again, it is how it's presented. Is it overhanded? Or is it, I don't know. If the current production team remains in charge, the show's dead. Could a reboot fix it? Maybe. But I don't see that happening for at least a couple of years, if ever. All right. Somebody says amen to that person. And then somebody says there are always fans who don't like the direction of the show. That is true. That is very true. I mean, granted, I think part of Peter Capaldi, the fan drop off of Peter Capaldi's era, is you went from David Tennant, because at least over here in America, I don't think many people were really watching when Christopher Eccleston was on, besides diehard Doctor Who fans. Then near the tail end of the Tennant era, when he kind of became a heartthrob, that people started really liking the show. So fact and so that, series 5 had a, show premiere in New York City, and it was being aired on BBC America day and date with BBC One over in the UK. That's when it took off right there. And then Matt Smith, I don't find him a handsome man at all, but a lot of people did. And then you have the older Capaldi. And I think that really, you could say, was divisive for fans, is because they appreciated the hot doctor of David Tennant, the hot doctor, quotation fingers, of Matt Smith. And then you have this old guy. And I think that hurt some avenues or some aspects of the show. And so you could also say that there's some, well, I didn't like that direction. I wanted a hot doctor, and I all I got was Peter Capaldi. That should be a shirt. All right. There were those, just like the Chris Chibnall ones, who moaned in the 80s that under J&T wasn't as good as the 70s. Yep, that is true. There was those in the Hinchcliffe era who hated what he was doing. This person is really good. To be fair, the people who say that the fans are just upset at having a female or LGBTQ doctor have a point. I lost long-standing Who friends over the casting of Jodie Whittaker in the weeks after her casting announcement, all because she was a woman and that the Doctor Who was a role model for boys. Some rants over Ncudi's casting were sort of hinting at color and sexuality, but actually saying it because misogyny is not quite as taboo as racism or homophobia. Where is this person going? Doctor Who was always common. It's primetime BBC One entertainment. You're not going to get socialization there and never have done. Who needs it to rest for 3 or 4 years while it's completely renewed? Handing the show back to RTD was a great publicity stunt, as I remember fans reacting when the news broke, but that was all it was. A publicity stunt. Interesting. Publicity stunt. Okay. Last one. So it says, so well put, absolutely brilliant. My sentiments to the person who posted the very short 9-paragraph essay, including citations and just kidding. That would be funny. That would be hysterical. So well put, absolutely brilliant. My sentiments too. I love the idea of a woman doctor and was very disappointed in general for Jodie, mainly as I loved her in Broadchurch. Ncuti I never had heard of. Same with me, but was really hopeful. But again, in general, I was disappointed. I agree. I did not know who Jodie was. I was hopeful. Ncuti I was hopeful of. I'd never seen any of them. Even though I had watched Broadchurch, I did not connect either one of them. And I feel as though you also have to... the way I look at all of these is Christopher Eccleston, I had never seen before. Again, I'm not obviously in the UK. David Tennant, I'd never seen him in anything before. And then as I'd be watching, Harry Potter, I'd be like, oh, that's the guy. That's the doctor. Oh my gosh, look at that. And then Matt Smith, I'd never even heard of before. And then he pops up in this and that from time to time. He was in a horror movie the other day. I was actually quite shocked by that. I like the fact that, at least for me, an American, I generally have not heard of these people. And I feel as though Ncuti actually is probably the more flashier of the hires, having been in the show that I know Liam likes. I started watching the first episode and it was this person continues, I'll never stop watching, always something for me to enjoy in every series from 1 to 40, but at the moment I'm not enjoying like I did back in the late 2000s. Just my opinion though. I like that. That was good. All right. So with that, I am going to go over and look at this article that was done by Doctor Who. Oh, it was there. Grr. I hate that my phone just deletes things from time to time. All right. So from DoctorWhoTV.co.uk, we have an article released the 28th of March, 2025. Why current Doctor Who is losing public favor, what the data reveals. So it just says this week marks the 20th anniversary since the Doctor Who returned to our screens in 2005. Wow, that is an interesting. As a statistics nerd, I like this so far. I was curious to see how this show currently is perceived with hard data, especially with such a milestone being reached. Conveniently, YouGov released a poll to mark the anniversary, offering some rather eye-popping insights to how the UK public feels about Doctor Who right now. So it says the basics. According to the survey, 26% of UK adults said they had never seen either version of the show. Not the classic run from 1963 to 89, not the modern run revival from since 2005. Among 18 to 24-year-olds, that figure jumps to a staggering 39%. The show is, in spite of RTD's assurance, struggles to connect with... let me reread that again. Among the 18 to 24-year-olds, that figure jumps to a staggering 39%, suggesting the show is, in spite of RTD's assurance struggling to connect with younger generations. So I believe if I recall, he really liked the data from the BBC iPlayer and whatnot for that market, that it was actually higher than he anticipated. But when the viewing figures are so low, I don't know why that would give you like reasons to joy. Anyway, then it says, even among those who have watched Doctor Who, the level of enthusiasm is underwhelming. 20% said they prefer the classic series, while 15% favor the current version. Another 10% liked both about the same, but 20% said that they do not like either. On top of that, the 9% said that they did not know what they thought. I don't know what I think about that. So what does this mean? Looking at the age gap breakdown, older generations who grew up with it and remember watching the original series are surprisingly more loyal than to the classic era. Among the 65s and over, 34% like the original series, while only 4% support the current iteration. The 50s to 64 group show the similar trend, 32% like the classic, just 10 for the current. Younger viewers are more inclined to favor the revival era, particularly those who grew up with it. But even in the most supportive group, the 18 to 24-year-olds, 26% they prefer the modern version. That number drops to 22% among the 25 to 49-year-olds, which is concerning considering this age group is arguably the core audience the current series should be engaging in the most. In short, enthusiasm for the modern show isn't particularly strong, even among those you'd expect to be most interested. Worse still, the respondent, the more likely they were to have never seen Doctor Who at all. Nearly 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds and 31% of 25 to 49-year-olds said that they've never watched either version, compared to just 15% of those aged 50 to 64. That feels like a huge red flag. The show is clearly not breaking through in new generations the way it once did. Now, I'm just going to pause right there. And I think the main reason why it's not breaking through is because of all of the apps that are available, all the streaming services, all the channels. I think it is, when you only have 5 channels to choose from, props to, the 10% of people who grew up with it between the 64 and 50 that had never watched a single episode. That must have, that had got to be some massive gymnastics right there. That's all I'm saying. You were dipping, diving, and, probably jumping out windows, hopefully, not 2-story flats or whatnot. You're over at your friend's house and I'm going to watch Doctor Who. No! Jump. Crash. Flat. We've got another Doctor Who jumper today. Just wanted to make sure he lived his entire life without watching it. Let's see. The big picture. At least from where I'm sitting, older audiences are keeping the flame of the classic series alive. And personally, I agree, because without that, why would they be even bothering animating some of these classic episodes? I know why they're animating and kind of changing some of the newer and cutting parts of it to make it shorter is for the younger audience, but I digress. The current era has some support among younger viewers, but even that is relatively soft, and among older viewers, support for the new era series is virtually non-existent. Be really interesting to see what the Big Finish numbers are for the new series. I think that's one of the reasons why Big Finish has done the classic Doctor's New Monsters thing. Most concerning of all, the youngest adults are the most disengaged altogether. And if there's only one thing that the franchise needs to stay relevant, is a new generation of fans. None of this is entirely shocking, especially given Doctor Who's most recent run with Ncuti Gatwa in the lead did not exactly light up the ratings. And I like that they have a hot link right to the ratings from drwhotv.co.uk. And even RTD acknowledged the problem. While some fans feel this current iteration, the overall audience figures didn't reflect the resurgence in cultural relevance. with Gatwa's second season on the way very soon as of date of recording and date of writing this, there is still hope that the show might find its spark again. As someone who generally wants to see the show succeed, I'd love to see it reconnect with the wider public again. If current Doctor Who is going to continue, this poll makes one thing very clear. It needs to reconnect with the old and new fans alike, and fast. Very well put. Very well put. I tend to agree with that. I think that there's a lot of things that could be done. I think there's a lot of things that could need to be done. And I think, again, I just appreciate my classic era stuff. I appreciate my classic original Star Trek series. I like that I have the Blu-ray Next Generation. I love that I have the Deep Space Nine, I believe, on iTunes because they have not come up with a box set. I love that I have, I'm not sure if I have Voyager. I know I have the Enterprise because I've never watched it. And I know if Liam's listening to this, he's just, dude, you need to do that. Anyway, sorry, I had to channel my inner Liam there for a second. So, what are your thoughts? Please email the show. Tell us what your thoughts are revolving around the question that I posed, the title of this episode. Do Doctor Who fans want their show to be canceled? Please comment if you're watching it on YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, blah, blah, blah. If you'd like to, email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. You can tweet the show at Alhambra Podcast. DMs are open. And until next time, stay tuned for the next episode of the 51st Best Doctor Who Shows podcasts out of at least a list of 100. Thanks for listening. Bye.
You have been listening to the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Doctor Who is owned and trademarked by the BBC. Doctor Who Alhambra is not affiliated with the BBC or Big Finish. No infringement is intended. Visit our website at alhambrapodcast.weebly.com or email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. Tweet us at Alhambra Podcast. That is ALHAMBRA Podcast. Thank you.
It could have been a lot better. It could have been slightly better written, especially the last story.